Hello, this is Chef John from foodwishes.com with Borscht-Braised beef short ribs. That's right, I was going to call this beet-braised beef short ribs, but then I remembered people don't like beets, or at least they think they don't like beets. So I ended up going with Borscht-Braised instead. But semantics aside, I thought this came out really good and fairly gorgeous to look at if you ask me. So let me show you how to put this delicious dish together, and we'll start by seasoning our beef short ribs. And there they are. Those are never not beautiful. And we'll go ahead and we'll generously season both sides with kosher salt, as well as some freshly ground black pepper. And please notice those are cut into about 3-inch pieces, which I think is your ideal braising length. And that's another reason you want to get your meat from the butcher counter and not just grab it out of the meat case. All right, the butcher's more than happy to cut that exactly how you want. But anyway, we're going to season those generously all over, and then we'll head over to the stove where, as usual, we're going to brown these in a little bit of vegetable oil over high heat. And if we have any kids watching out there, don't stick your hands in the pot like this. Use tongs so you don't burn yourself. Why was I doing it? I'm not that smart. So please be careful. And like I said, we're going to brown those up. And then once we think we have our beef browned sufficiently, we'll remove that to a bowl to reserve that while we cook our onions. And normally at this point, we would dump our onions in, reduce the heat, and kind of cook these on medium until they just turn translucent. But not this time. We're going to leave our heat on high because we do need to get some color on these onions. So we'll cook those stirring, and they will go from translucent to kind of golden brown. And you're probably thinking, that's good right there. No, it's not. We want these to go from golden brown to golden black. And once those have gone over to the dark side, we can go ahead and dump in our flour, and we'll stir that in, and we'll cook that for exactly 1 minute. And if you're worried those black pieces of onion are going to give your dish an off flavor, they won't. But what they will do is deepen the color of our sauce. And when you're talking about a sauce made with beets, that's important. All right, we don't want to be ladling over a pink sauce. It's not a good look. And after our flour is cooked for about a minute, we'll go ahead and dump in our stock or broth. I'm using a roasted chicken stock, but virtually any meat stock or broth will do. And once we've introduced our liquid, we'll go ahead and add the rest of the ingredients, which includes 1 bay leaf, as well as some celery and carrots. And then, of course, one of the stars of the show, the beets. So I had 2 relatively fat beets, which I peeled and cut into eighths. And we'll go ahead and we'll dump those in. So we do want those in relatively large pieces so they don't disintegrate during the cooking. So we'll go ahead and we'll bring this up to a simmer before we reintroduce our beef short rib pieces. And I decided to give it one more shot of salt here. We will check and adjust at the end as usual, but we're fine to toss in a nice big pinch here. And then once that's simmering, we'll go ahead and put our beef back in and nestle it down lovingly. And we'll try to make sure those are evenly distributed. And at this point, we are ready for the oven. So what we'll do is we'll cover this and pop that into the center of a 325-degree oven for 2 hours, or until your meat is tender. And this is what mine looked like after the aforementioned 120 minutes. And we'll give that the old poka. And I said tender, not falling off the bone. All right, some people tend to cook these too long, and you can actually go too far and the meat will start to get dry and chalky. So we'll just go until a knife slides in fairly easily. And of course, if the meat's tender, I bet you anything those beets are going to be tender, which they were. And at this point, we're just about done. What we'll do is we'll transfer all that meat and vegetables into our serving platter and simply keep it warm while we finish the sauce. So all I want you to do is turn your heat on to high and bring this up to a boil. And all we're going to do here is reduce this by approximately half until it sort of thickens up a little bit. And while that's happening, if you want, you can skim that fat from the top. And along with your cardiologist, I do recommend doing that. And by the way, we talk a lot about fonds during these videos, but there's also something called side fond, where stuff actually caramelizes to the sides of the pot. And if you do want a little bit of extra flavor, which you should always want, we can just splash a little bit of the liquid up on the sides and kind of rinse that goodness down into our sauce. I think it's a nice little trick, but you decide. You are the James Bond of your side fond. And then once our sauce is reduced down to the perfect viscosity, as judged by you, we will turn off the heat and give it a little check for seasoning. And mine was just about perfect, except I decided it needed a little more salt, and I bet yours probably will too. And once our sauce is done, we'll finish by ladling that over our still warm meat and vegetables. And I don't know about you, but that is just one beautiful sight. And this would be the perfect point to remind you of how we blackened some of those onions earlier to deepen the color of this sauce. This is why. But anyway, we'll spoon over that sauce, And then I'm going to garnish this with a couple pieces of chive. I know there was none in the recipe, but there will be. Hang tight. And my Borscht-Braised beef short ribs are done. And looking visually arresting if I do say so myself. And in case you haven't noticed, this is quite the low-carb dish. Although we are going to serve it on mashed potatoes, so never mind. And then keeping with the borscht theme, I garnish with some sour cream and a nice big pinch of chives. And forget how good it looks, assuming you think it looks good. That is just one incredibly delicious bowl of food. We got that tender, succulent meat, as well as, believe it or not, tender, delicious beets. And I will admit, I'm not a big beet guy. By the way, beet guy, worst superhero ever. But like I was saying, I'm not a huge fan of beets, but in this they really are fantastic. That earthy sweetness just really works here, okay? So while most people claim not to like beets, I think it's mostly because they've never had them in things like this. So I really do hope you give them a chance and give this a try soon. So head over to foodwishes.com for all the ingredient amounts and more info as usual. And as always, enjoy.